is built off of the current service areas, showing future land uses for those with a little bit closer, nearer term future land uses. And then the future land use map expands into the future service areas, so it's a much longer range land use map. The community resources packet is also included as part of the plan. That's a list of studies in the area and the status of those studies. That has not been updated since the plan was adopted in March of 2008. But some of those studies have been completed, some are ongoing, and there may be some new ones that we need to add when we go through our upcoming comprehensive plan overhaul. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, commissioners, we have the idea that on future agendas, maybe a little at a time, not all at once, but some of these topics that we're covering very broadly here, we can discuss them a little more. For example, the community development plan, which is a comprehensive plan, that its relationship to the decisions that are made and zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, that's commonly a source of confusion. So that's one topic that I anticipate that the commissioners will want to at least discuss and have an opportunity to ask questions and make observations at future meetings. Some of the other items on here, the same is true. Something that you'll, of course, be relying on at every meeting is the zoning regulations.
Not included in the community development plan technically, but sort of something that followed that we expect to be maybe incorporated in the next version of the plan is the HDR Transportation Modeling Memorandum, which you've got a copy of in your binders, from March of 2011. As part of the community development plan from 2008, it was recognized that perhaps the land uses on the east side of 35 were not necessarily what the city still saw for that or envisioned for that area. And so as part of the transportation modeling, we wanted to use something that was a little bit more realistic so that we could actually have usable data as a result of this project. So HDR, working with staff, developed a new land use plan for the east side of I-35 just within the boundaries of that modeling area. Since it's not been through any formal approval process, it's not official, but it was reviewed by the Planning Commission and the City Council, and it does serve as an addendum to the Transportation Master Plan. So we could vary from those land uses somewhat, but we'd need to think long and hard before we varied too drastically from those with our future update. The Main Street Corridor Plan was adopted in 2001. It was never actually implemented, but I've included a copy of that because it was adopted. It went through an extensive public involvement process and developed a new plan for the Main Street Corridor. It includes, as part of the plan, sample zoning regulations. They were not actually adopted, but they are included in that plan that was adopted. Existing conditions, which of course were from 2001. A vision plan, which defines a vision for the future of the corridor, which uses both text and graphics to create that vision. And the last sheet is an action matrix, which outlines the implementation process. Again, few, if any, of those steps were ever actually followed, but there was a plan for having that implemented. I know in recent years the Planning Commission has indicated a desire to see that plan actually implemented. Moving into the state regulations, the Kansas statutes and Chapter 12 is the Cities and Municipalities chapter. Article 5 I did not include in your binders, but that's additions, vacation, and lot frontage, so that would cover things like annexations. I did include Article 7 because that deals very directly with the Planning Commission, that's the Planning and Zoning article. Kansas Open Meetings Act, or COMA, is the act that describes the state's requirements for meetings to be open to the public. And I've included some PowerPoint slides from an introduction to the Kansas Open Meetings Act seminar, and then also a detailed overview after that, which goes, again, into a lot more detail. Won't go into this in too much detail because we do have some more detailed training planned for you in the next month or so, but wanted to cover a few of the key points since a lot of you are new to the Planning Commission. Meetings can include phone and email conversations. It's any form of communication could constitute a meeting. It involves, or it includes serial meetings as well, which could be meetings that, communications that involve a majority of the commission, that share a common topic of discussion, that are intended by any or all participants to reach an agreement, or where the topic requires binding action, even if not all of you are involved at the same time, if it's multiple conversations that happen, two at a time. So we want to be careful about our communications with other planning commissioners and just make sure that we're following the rules set out by the state. And again, more detailed training will be coming up soon. And then not included in your binders, I did want to touch on what we call the golden criteria, in case you hear that term. This stems from a court case, Golden versus the City of Overland Park, from 1978, where the Kansas Supreme Court identified 8 factors that zoning bodies should consider when hearing rezoning requests. And those do serve as the basis for our criteria for considering applications, which are found in the code in the zoning chapter 18-185-150. So you do have that. That's in the in your binders under the zoning regulations. Are there any questions? I know I've run through a lot of things really quickly, so.
You guys have talked about adding some discussion items to the agendas coming forward over the next few months. I think it would be real important with the change in the commission to put first on those lists. One is an overview of the ordinance, the zoning ordinance that you had mentioned, and the community development plan, an overview, not a real in-depth walkthrough that you would get over time, but something as a very good introduction to both of those. I think those would be very important to have on the first next agenda, the August meeting.
Okay, that's a good recommendation. We'll take that into consideration.
Those are the big tools that you're going to be needing. So.
Right.
One thing I should point out, because we will be holding a CORA, what's it called? It's an official's liability training for the commission at either the next meeting or the meeting after that. The Administrative Services Department with the city will be conducting that, but it will be a commission meeting. At least that's what I anticipate. So we'll go into that in a little more detail. It's something that's very important, and something that I want to make sure you're informed of that.
And CORA, you may already know, but that's the Kansas Open Records Act. So.
And COMA is Kansas Open Meetings.
Right. Right. Well, if there aren't any other questions right now, I know Mike's going to elaborate on some of these things with his presentation.
Okay. Next on the agenda is item number 2, updates on current and pending activities.